sharing a screen with you. So you might find it helpful that if you pin her video, which you can use by selecting the 3 dots in the top right of the taskbar for Zoom, and you should be able to pin a video, so you'll be able to see Georgia alongside the presentation there. So I believe that is everything from me. I'm going to hand it over to Georgia, and we'll get going with today's session.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Gavin. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you all, even if it's not face to face. I'm just going to jump straight in because there's loads to pack in today. So before we get into the main body of the workshop, I'm going to introduce myself a bit. My name's Georgia. I'm a filmmaker, theatre maker and facilitator. The last one of those basically just means running workshops like this, but I run them in filmmaking and in theatre and other kind of creative workshops. So like I say, I work in film. These are some of the projects that I've worked on. So what's been really great, I've been really fortunate since graduating from uni, and actually while I was there as well, to work on quite a broad range of styles of projects. So you can see some examples here. I worked on Jingle Jangle in the locations department, a short film called Here I F. I was in the production department for that one. The one up the top with the daisies on the eyes is from a music video that I worked on, and again I was in the production department for that, and then and also did some sound recording actually last minute, and then the Precipice with the Grange Festival was a videography project that I worked on. So that's where I was basically in charge of the whole video, but I was filming an event instead of a fictional film. I also work in theatre. I'm a writer and director for theatre as well. And these are some stills from some projects that I've worked on, that I've created. We've performed stuff in London, which is really great fun, in fringe venues there. And then also with the Garage in Norwich. They have some really good kind of development schemes there that we've been fortunate enough to benefit from. And most of those theatre productions have been with my company that I co-run, which is called Matapo Arts. You can see my back in one of these pictures here with our logo on. And so a lot of the facilitation that I do, the workshops that I run, is through that as well. So you can see some pictures from stuff that we've done in the past: filmmaking, craft workshops for younger kids, acting, all sorts of different stuff. So that's what I do. I guess you describe it as sort of like a portfolio career in terms of I do lots of different things, but a massive chunk of that is working in the film industry. So that's what I do now post uni, but how did I get there? So it all started, I was actually originally interested in acting, and the thing that switched me on to filmmaking and being behind the camera was doing film studies at GCSE. I was home educated. I couldn't find a single picture from when I was doing film studies. So this is me on a sort of hippie cultural exchange program off in Germany when I was doing my film studies GCSE. So that's an example of me at about 14 or 15, I think. I then went on to study performing arts BTech at a sixth form college called Epping Forest College. I think it's now called New City. So I grew up in kind of East London, Essex border. So I knew that I wanted to go into film and being behind the camera, but I thought that doing a performing arts BTech would give me really good grounding from the actor's side. And also I wasn't sure that I wanted to give up on acting yet. So I wanted to pursue it a little bit further. And this is an image of me in a play from that time. While I was at college, I did the BFI Film Academy, which is a really great program that I'd recommend looking up. Basically, the BFI run part-time kind of extracurricular courses all over the country. My closest one was run at the Barbican in London, in East London. And basically, it was just a practical, fun part-time course where we made films and had guest speakers and stuff. So that top picture is from the film that we made, and the bottom picture is us at a Q&A. So that was a really great kind of influence. I was doing performing arts at college, but I got more filmmaking information and experience alongside it from the BFI Film Academy. Then I had a gap year. This is a photo that I took while I was on my gap year. That was a really great time for me to kind of experiment, work on my own stuff, but also just watch a load of films and kind of figure out what I liked. But also work and save up money. So I took a year out before uni, which I really enjoyed. And then I studied a BA in film and moving image production at Norwich University of the Arts. This is a still from my graduate film, but the course there, as I'm sure a lot of you will already be aware of, is a very practical course. You make films all the way through. So that's just an example of some of the work that I did while I was there. And I think that practical nature of the course really allowed me to get these things from it. So collaboration, communication, and being able to experimentation is really, like, if I had to sum up that course in 3 words, that's what I got from it. So you work collaboratively the whole time you're there, and that's a really tough skill to develop, but it's a really important one for going into the industry, and actually for loads of other stuff, but particularly the film industry is a collaborative industry. So that's a really important skill that this course really gave me. And then really hand in hand, that was communication. Being able to communicate with my team, being able to communicate with actors as a director is really important. But also film is literally, you know, it's storytelling. You're communicating something to your audience, to the people watching. So lots of different types of communication were learnt during the course. And then finally, experimentation is, you know, we made loads of films, loads of them were terrible. But it was an opportunity to try things in a safe environment and try different styles. So, you know, each project had a certain brief, and that kind of pushed me in different directions that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of by myself. So yes, I think if I had to sum up what I got from the course, that's what it would be. But also, if I had to sum up what I use from the course, what I've taken with me into the rest of my career, that's definitely how I would sum it up. And all of those pictures are from when I was at uni on different projects behind the scenes. So that's me. We're going to jump straight into the practical workshop now. Like Gavin said at the beginning, if you do have any questions for me about what I do, or about the film industry, or about the course at NUA, or anything, any kind of question that you want to ask, just pop it in the chat and we'll get to it at some point during the session. But for now, you've been asked beforehand to have a pen and a bit of paper. And so we're going to do a bit of a warm-up exercise. So for anyone who doesn't know what a storyboard is, this is an example of one from Spider-Man, as you can see. Basically, a storyboard is just a visual way of mapping out your film. It's all very well having a script. Scripts are really important, but a script is written down, it's using words, and film is all about pictures. So it can be really helpful, especially, you know, if you're in charge of camera, to map out what your story is going to be and visually how you're going to tell it. So we're going to do a very speedy, simple version of this. I cannot stress enough how little you need to be able to draw. I'm terrible at drawing. It's just a plan. It's not a finished piece of work. So first things first, get your piece of paper and your pen and draw a line down the middle of your piece of paper, and then 2 lines acrossways to make it into a grid of 6 boxes. And you can do that in portrait or in landscape. It doesn't matter, as long as you've got 6 boxes of about the same size for us to draw in. Once you've got your 6 boxes, what I want you to do is very quickly, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to pick 2 objects from the room that you're currently in, 2 random objects. 10 seconds, trust me on this. Go. I'm going to do the same. Okay, I reckon that's about 10 seconds. Hopefully you have 2 items. If not, grab them from in front of you right now. So for example, my 2 objects are my pen and a mascara that was in my bag next to me. And what we're going to do is I want you to choose One of these objects is going to be your hero, and one of them is going to be your villain in your story. Okay, so it can be super simple. Don't overthink it. I think that my mascara is going to be the villain and my pen is going to be the hero, just because I think the spiky head of a mascara seems quite villain-like, look a bit evil. And I want you to think, you know, when you're making that decision, some kind of conflict between them might come up. Think about why they're a hero and a villain, and that will give you your story for your scene. So think about, basically our storyboard is going to be them having either a fight or an argument, or it could be one of them professing their love to the other one, anything you like. And we're going to break this down. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds for your first box at the top of your page. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to create an establishing shot. So that's the beginning of your film. And I really want you to think about how you're using the frame. You can see in this Spider-Man example, it's not just, you know, full stick men in each of them. You can see in one, Spider-Man's close up, in another one, he's far away, another one, he's moving across the screen. So think about how you're using the frame to its full potential. But the first one is introducing us to the setting, establishing what's going on. Don't overthink it though. I've given you a lot of words, I know, but don't overthink it. You've got 30 seconds to do an establishing shot in your first frame. Go. Okay, 5 seconds left. And stop. I'm going to trust that you've all put your pens down or your pencils down. I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Don't worry. 20 seconds. And this is for your second frame of your story. So the next one along. And this one is going to be a close-up. So a close-up shot is where you can just see the head and shoulders. And this is going to introduce your protagonist, your hero. So whichever object you've decided is your hero, you're introducing them in this shot. So 20 seconds, go. Halfway through, you've got 10 seconds left. And stop, pens down. I hope you heard that tone because it shows I am actually timing it. Great, okay. In your third box, we're halfway through. In your third box, you're going to do another close-up, so head and shoulders shot, but this one is going to be of your villain. So think about how you might show them slightly differently, maybe a different angle to their face, or they're turned a different way. Third box, you've got 20 seconds again to introduce your villain. Go. And 10 seconds left. And stop there. Great. Okay. So in your fourth box, I want to see a medium shot, which, as you can probably guess, means you're a little bit further away. You can see about half of someone's body. But in this mid shot, we want to see the conflict. Are they having a physical fight? Are they having an argument? Whatever it is that's going on between your hero and your villain, show us in this fourth frame. And again, you've got 20 seconds. Go. And you've got 5 seconds left. And stop there. Great. Okay, so in your penultimate box, in your second to last box, so we've introduced our characters, we've introduced the world, we've seen the conflict. Now, what I'd like you to do is an extreme close-up, which means you can just see one detail. So it might be just someone's hand, just someone's eyes. You see that a lot in Westerns. If there's like a shootout, you'll just see characters' eyes, whatever you want, but pick the most important detail from this conflict and show us that in your extreme close-up in your 5th box now, your penultimate box. Again, you've got 20 seconds. Go. Halfway through. And stop there. Great. Okay. So at this point, you should have one box left on your storyboard. What I'd like you to do is whatever shot type you want, your characters can be as close or as far away from the camera as you want, as big or as small in the frame as you want. But this is the ending, the resolution. So whether you want that to be a cliffhanger, or if you want to have your 2 characters make friends at the end, or one of them runs away, anything that you want to happen, show us in your final shot. And I'm going to be nice. I'm going to give you 40 seconds to finish off this one, because you've got a little bit more to decide upon. 40 seconds. Go. Halfway through. And stop there. Stop there. Okay. So obviously you can't show me your work, but really that's not the point of this, because you know it's helped you tell a story. We are, what are we? We're 20 minutes in, and you've already come up with a story, your own narrative. So really well done. Hopefully that's got us into the spirit of things, thinking about visual storytelling, which is what today is all about. What we're going to do now is we're going to watch a short film. You may have seen it before, but likely you haven't, because it's not on Netflix or anything, and it is a very short film. Gavin, I think, is going to take over screen sharing from me. But if the film isn't working for you through the Zoom call, I'm also going to put the link to it in the chat, so you can go off and watch it on your own device, if that's easier. So we're going to watch it once through, and then we're going to ask some questions, and then we're going to watch it again. And we're going to keep the sound off, or I mean, there isn't any dialogue in it, so you don't need to worry about sound. And that's because we're just focusing on the visuals. So that's what I'm going to say. Gavin, feel free to press play. I can see that you're
just triple checking everyone can see the screen there.
I can see it.
Perfect, perfect.
Great, thank you, Gavin. We'll give anyone who was away watching it on their own a few more moments while I set up my screen sharing again. Okay, so I think we'll keep going. But for anyone who has finished watching the clip, which I hope everyone has, we've got some questions to answer. So anyone who would like to, feel free to have a go at answering in the chat. But like I say, we're going to watch it again in a minute, so don't worry too much. But if anyone would like to have a go at answering what happened in this clip, then feel free to put it in the chat now. And I suppose I've called it a clip there, but it is a full short film. That's the full thing. There's no more either end of it. And also, yeah, feel free to just kind of have a think to yourself. Like I say, we're going to watch it again in a moment. Second question is, what did it make you feel? So first of all, what was going on, but then also what was the result of that? What effect did that have with you as an audience member? And then what did it tell us about the character? So for example, if it made you feel a certain way in general, was that you feeling that towards the character himself? Obviously there's one guy in it. And how did they get stuff across about him as well? And then finally, what did you like about it and why? There are no right or wrong answers, obviously. It's subjective, but you know, was there anything? Fight Club vibes, yeah, 100%, definitely. So it's worth thinking about what is it that those two things have in common? Like Fight Club is obviously a much bigger film, it's much longer, it's got famous actors in it, all that kind of stuff. But it is that sense of like, maybe the camera work is quite similar, it looks quite similar. The character is acting in quite a similar way. So what I'd like you to do, those are the questions. We're going to watch it again. I'd like you to, you can keep all 4 of these in mind, but if you think you could only focus on 1 or 2, pick 1 or 2 of these questions that you couldn't answer the first time round and have them in your mind when you're watching it a second time. And I'm going to ask you again afterwards what you think. So Gavin, feel free to take over from me again so we can watch it. And everyone, yeah, pick 2 of those 4 questions to keep in the back of your mind, or even just 1. Yeah. Great, thanks for that, Gavin. Lovely. Okay, so I'm going to return to these questions. I can see Holly has answered all 4, which is great. Seeing a few more come in, which is really great. Perfect. So I really like, Holly, what you said about the color palette. The grey color palette emphasizes his grey and dull life. Yes, definitely. And Tanashika, I think it is purposefully jarring. Yeah, there is a lag on that a little bit, but particularly at the end when it's coming away from the safe, that is definitely intentional for it to be jagged like that. A little bit uncomfortable. Yeah, exactly. So the focus on the person or the subject made it more interesting. That's a really good point. And you know, it's really good that you've noticed that it made you feel uncomfortable, because I think that's what they were trying to do. Clever but also disturbing in a way. Yeah, the character was gluttonous. Definitely, we saw that in so many different ways throughout, didn't we? A dark tone with a didactic message. God, didactic's a good word. Character is an everyman who finds an opportunity to change his life through the black hole, but it backfires. Yeah, perfect. Spot on. Those are all really good. So let's see. Yeah, let's see a couple of the others coming through. Bored of his routine life, and the grey scale along with the slow camera moves showed his slow moving life. Boring and dull. Great. Yeah. The idea of greed. Yeah, definitely, which goes along with gluttony. That's perfect. Yeah. And so this film does have sound attached to it, but it's all sound effects, basically. It's the sound of the photocopier, the sound of him chewing the Snickers bar. So it's not really, really important to what's happening. And the reason why I got Gavin to play it without any sound is that what we're focusing on today is the visuals, is telling a story through those frames, through the camera movement, all that kind of stuff. And so it's really good that some of you have picked up on how the camera has been used. It made me feel very tense and on edge, especially the end, which shows that the creation of tension was done effectively, even without music. Exactly, spot on. Perfect. Yeah. And so from my perspective, I think the bottom line here is the things that you guys are picking up on are to do with the person and to do with the kind of way it's been filmed, the camera movement, the grey colors, all of that kind of stuff. So it could have been filmed anywhere. It's the framing, you know, it's the pacing, it's that stuff that's really effective and it's telling the story, and that gets that reaction from you that makes you feel something. Yeah, perfect. That's great. Yeah, Fight Club vibes, definitely. Great. So I think it's really useful sometimes to just spend a bit of time watching films in a little bit more of a critical way, even if you're not interested in like film studies or the more academic side of like studying films. It can really help you when you're making your own films, just figuring out what you like and why you like it. So hopefully this has given you a bit of inspiration for what we're going to do next. So we're going to do a bit of a brainstorm all together. It's really great that you guys have already been active in the chat. We're going to use that to our advantage. So we're going to do a word association all together. The way that this is going to work is I'm going to give a starting word, and then if you have a word association, put it in the chat. So we're not taking turns or anything. That would be very difficult to organize. Just put in a word if it comes to mind, off of my original word or off of the words that people then put into the chat. And then when I feel like we've got enough material, I'll bring it to a close. So for example, if I said the word rain, someone might say cloud, someone might say damp, someone might say cold, but also you might say sad, or you might say, I don't know, shelter from the rain, something like that. There are no wrong answers. This is all about creating ideas and jumping off points that we're then going to utilize to make our films today. So the word that we're going to start off with is the word waiting. So I'm going to put that in the chat and then off you go. Great. These are really good already. Very good. Great. These are really good. Fab. Okay. Lovely. I reckon there are so many of you doing such a good job that we'll bring it to a close there. I'm just going to very quickly read back over them. But what I want you to do is, and you can be thinking about this already, but in a moment, I'm going to ask you to pick 3 words out of this to kind of frame your story around. But I'm just going to read through them while everyone else does as well, but I'll read through them aloud. So we've got time, patient, waiting, obviously the original one, bored, anxious, roller coaster, queue, restless, never ending, longing, stress, time, nervous, tired, work, tension, knitting, I like that, butterflies, suspense, tragedy, crush, pandemic, time, anticipation, love, lockdown, don't do anything, car journey, music. Fab. Brilliant. A really nice range of words there, different types of words. Lovely. So what I want you to do is choose 3 words that you think either go together or you could make some kind of very short story or narrative out of, a short scene out of. What I want you to do while you're picking these, and bearing in mind, we're going to be filming these right now in the room that you're in. So think about what you have to hand. For example, for me, I'm in a sort of bedroom. I've got a big windowsill, which is where you guys are. I've got a wardrobe. This isn't my bedroom. I'm in a hotel currently, and there's some fun masks up on the wall that could be quite interesting. So thinking about your environment, for example, waiting does kind of lend itself to like waiting for a bus, waiting for a train. That would be tricky to do in your room. So you don't need to tell me what your words are, but just pick 3 for yourself that you think could go together nicely to make a short little narrative. And once you've done that, we're going to make another storyboard. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to finish going through and picking your words. And it is probably helpful to kind of write them down somewhere so you don't lose track of them. And then we're going to move on to creating a second storyboard, less frantically, less quickly. Yeah, so the context that you need to have for this, like I say, is the room that you're in. So you might be in your bedroom, you might be, I don't know, in the living room, anything like that. But wherever it is that you've got to film in right now, that's where this story needs to be set. So once you've got your 3 words, what we're going to do is we're going to make another storyboard. So same again, I'd recommend 6 shots. If you need an extra one, that's fine. But I'd recommend drawing another grid on the other side of your piece of paper. 1 line down the middle, 2 across. That gives you 6 boxes. I reckon that will be enough to tell a really simple story, but also the time that we have today. And I'm still going to time you, just because obviously there's so many of us, but also it keeps you on your feet. It keeps you not second guessing yourself, not overthinking. Remember, this is a fun starter exercise that you can use for things that you have more time for. So yeah, we're going to have 6 boxes, and I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do the first 2 frames. So to do 1 and 2, and think about the beginning of your story, thinking about what you're setting up, who you're setting up, whether you're going to be the character in your film or whether you're going to have an object. So this is a time to plan, but also draw the 2 frames for the beginning of your story. You've got 2 minutes. One minute left for those first 2 frames. And by frames, I just mean boxes. Those first 2 boxes on your piece of paper. Okay, and now, as you have probably already guessed, we're going to have about another 2 minutes for the middle 2 shots in your storyboard. So think about the action in these 2. You've introduced your character, you've introduced the world of your story in your first 2. The second 2 is all about what leads your character to the pinnacle, the climax of your story. What's the action involved? It doesn't need to be that crazy. It doesn't need to be like a big action sequence. It could just be waiting is the action in your film. But thinking about how you're showing that visually. Remember, you can be really up close, you can be really far away. And think about what that says, what you're saying with that. And if you guys have any questions about what we're doing, feel free to put them in the chat and I will explain anything that I can further. Okay, and now a final 2 minutes-ish for your final 2 frames. So this is going to be the climax of your film. This is the point of your film. There might be a decision, there might be a dramatic thing that happens. Show us that in one frame and show us the resolution, the result, the ending, or the cliffhanger, if that's what you want to do, in your final frame, your final box on your piece of paper. Again, think about visually what's going to make this most either exciting or going to tell us the most. And yeah, remember as well that these drawings are just a plan. They're just for you. You don't have to show them to anyone if you don't want to. They're not the finished article. It's just to remind you what you want to do. And so you can see it laid out in front of you. Okie dokie. So I'm going to move on. If you're still finishing off your storyboards, then that's absolutely fine. But I'm just going to move on to the final bit of prep that we need to do before we get on to production or filming. So the final thing that we need to do is setting up the space that we're filming in. So like I say, when you were picking those words, when you were planning this storyboard, you had in mind the space that you're in, that you're going to have to film. And you're going to be filming either using the webcam on your computer or the camera on your phone, whatever it is that you are on or have to hand. So think about how you're maximizing the impact of your space, how you're really getting the most out of it. So if there's anything that you need to gather together, anything you need to set up in the space before you start filming, now is the time to do it. Think about if you're acting in your film, is what you're wearing right now good, or do you want to maybe add a jacket or a hat or a dressing gown or something that might tell us something more about the character? Think about if you need any props, if you need like a cup or a phone or a pen and paper or anything that you might need like that. And also think about, you know, the angles that you've decided on. How are you going to achieve them in the room that you're in? Where is your light coming from? For example, where I am here, I've got light coming directly in at me from this window, and I've got another window over there. So I want to make sure that I'm facing the light so that I can be seen. Or if you want to do something really dramatic but you can't see someone's face, you might want to turn it around the opposite way. So thinking about what you have at your disposal and setting up everything that you can before we start filming. This is your time to do that. I'm going to give you another kind of 2 minutes because I'm aware I've been chatting while you can, you know, have been starting to do that. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll do my best to explain further if anything is unclear. But yeah, props, costume, light, and getting ready to film from any angles that you're going to be filming from.
Hello, George. I just thought I'd ask a couple of questions while everybody's off filming, which I'm very excited to see and hear about how the film is going. But when it comes to running a film set and working with other people on a film set, what to you, what do you think is the most important aspect when it's on production? Even though that's a bit of a tough question, there's a million things going on. What do you think is one of the most important things when it comes to the day you're working with crew and cast? What's the kind of priority for you?
I think, yeah, it's a good question because you do have a lot to juggle when you're on set. Even if you're doing something quite small, you do have a lot of things to be thinking about, especially if you're directing or, you know, you're kind of in charge. I would say the two most important things are keeping things simple wherever you can. That makes your job easier at every point, but also it makes it a lot easier when you're communicating with people if you're only giving them the most important information, or you're really simplifying everything as much as you can, so there's no extra kind of waffle around anything or room for confusion. And the other thing is don't take anything to heart and keep moving forwards. You know, it's important to be kind on set, but often time pressures can get to people, and being able to just kind of, if something doesn't work out, if something's not quite right, then fine, let's change it, let's find something else. Keeping moving is definitely really, really important. I think what we're going to do now is, hopefully you have all set up your space and you've planned everything that you need to. The final thing before we go off for our main kind of chunk of filming is talking about actually how you're going to film what you're filming. So before this workshop, you were asked to download or get your hands on something called OBS Studio. If you don't have that software, don't worry. You can complete this task without it. But if you do have it, then if you haven't already, then load it up now. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things in case it all looks a bit intimidating, because it definitely did the first time that I used it. The only things that you need to worry about are the things that I have circled in pink on this screen. So the first one is sources down in the left-hand corner. I have to think about my lefts and rights then for a second. So your sources is your webcam and your microphone. Now for this, because we're focusing on visuals, you don't actually need to worry about a microphone too much, but your webcam is important. So you can go into sources and set up your webcam. You just need to give it permission to access it, like with Zoom or anything else. And then the other one is start recording over here. So the reason why OBS Studio is particularly good for the really simple kind of thing that we're doing today is that when you start recording, you can pause instead of stop your recording. So what I would like you to do, if possible, is film your first shot, hit pause instead of stop, move on to your next one, press record again, pause at the end of it, and do that until the end of your film, and only press stop at the very end. The reason why I would suggest doing that is that it will save as one file instead of having lots of clips that you need to watch in sequence.
Just gonna hop in. I believe it's a question that is related to this task. Is should we film landscape or portrait?
Oh, that is a great question. Thank you, Gavin. So I would always recommend going landscape, because that's how something would appear on the big screen. If you have a reason for doing it portrait, that's fine, but really usually the more effective choice is to go landscape. In OBS Studio, that will kind of already be set up in that setting, or it should be. But if you don't have this and you are filming on your phone, for example, it's very easy to pick up your phone and go to film this way. but we want you to turn it that way instead, because it will give a more filmic cinematic effect. The only other thing that I haven't circled on here that might be useful is finding where the file is saved, because when you hit stop recording, it's going to save the file automatically. So it's probably saved in your videos folder, but if you're struggling to find it after this session, or you just want to set it up to save to a particular place before you start recording, go into File up in the top left-hand corner, then click on Settings from there, then Output, and under Output there's Recording, and it will say there, and you can change it in there. So just, it's pretty simple to follow through from Settings, but it's under Output as to where your file, once you've finished recording, will be saved. So that's really all there is to OBS Studio that we need to worry about. There's loads of other stuff going on the screen, but those are the important bits. And like I say, if you don't have this software to hand, that's absolutely fine. You can use just the camera on your laptop or your tablet or your phone, whatever it is that you've got to hand, to film this short sequence. So, and also, you got a little preview there. The other thing is, I'm going to be sat here during the time that you're filming. So if you have any questions or you're struggling with something, just pop it in the chat. And apart from that, I think we're going to go through some other more general questions. So I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to do this. Same as with the storyboards, I want you to just go for it. Don't overthink it. You've got your plan in place. Just have a go. It's all about experimenting and trying stuff out. So I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. Off you go and get filming. Your 15 minutes starts now.
Georgia, I might, until we get some questions or kind of any queries towards the task itself, I'm gonna fire some questions over your way.
Go for it.
And first of all, just thinking about when it comes to these little projects where it's very much quick fire, what do you think is the kind of biggest lesson that we can take from doing a quick shoot like this? Was very much just splattering the ideas out on the page, picking up the camera and just kind of going with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I said about the course at NUA, it's really important to be able to just experiment and try things out, and kind of use what you've got, be really resourceful, and kind of that helps you figure out what you enjoy doing, but also it does genuinely make you a much better filmmaker because it gives you experience right from the word go. I definitely know some people who've been held back from making films because they're worried it won't be perfect, and I think just doing these really low stakes kind of exercises can help you get out of that mindset, and learn how to kind of keep improving and working on things and adapting things, instead of kind of holding yourself off from making something until you know it's going to be perfect, because that is never going to happen. That's not how, you know, creative things work. So yeah, it's all about just kind of learning how to experiment and figuring out what you like, what you enjoy making, but also what's the most effective when you look back on it as well.
And I've got a bit of a two-parter here. mainly I'm just intrigued to kind of hear your production stories, because I always have a good time with my film backgrounds, sort of diving back and talking about those. So first of all, what to you is the kind of the production memory that you cherish the most, be it where you just were on set and the actors did like an amazing performance and you think, you know what, that was something special, or whether it's just a whole really wholesome, really good production with the crew. What's kind of the memory that you really kind of cherish and thought, yeah, that was an amazing, incredible experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm fortunate, like I said at the beginning, to have worked on quite a range of different things. And so kind of different production environments, I think, really lend themselves to different types of those experiences that you look back on fondly. I think one thing that I look back on really fondly, weirdly, is something that went wrong on a set. The music video that I worked on that was on that slide at the beginning, which was for a band called Ida May. The song was called Baby I Need a Driver, and we filmed it in sort of rural Norfolk, the very beginning of 2020. And basically it was the weekend that there was a storm, I think Storm Kira maybe, or the one before that, I forget. But anyway, we were filming outside. The whole point of it is that it's filmed, it's kind of meant to be this 1960s inspired cult outside in the trees. And so we were outside, it was freezing, we didn't have any inside space. The trees were threatening to fall down on top of us. We were by a river, so that was particularly cold. But all of those difficulties actually made the crew and the cast really bond a lot more, because we were kind of all getting through something together. And I think that the atmosphere on that set is something that I really look back on fondly, because everyone was pitching in. You know, we had even Ida May, the band, were on set, and you know, they could have gone and sat in their car when it got horrible, but they didn't. They were there, they were holding people's coats, they were, you know, really involved as much as anyone else. And I think it made it feel really worth it. And also we were all really proud of the music video that we made at the end of the day. But yeah, I definitely look back on that weekend really fondly, despite the fact that, like, you know, trees were falling over and we were all freezing cold. Yeah.
I think it's actually, because my second part of the question was going to be obviously the opposite of, you know, what's a really kind of hilariously troubling time of production, but really a lot of the time they kind of go hand in hand, really, because, you know, if there's a problem or a situation that arises on a shoot, you always kind of, because you're working as a team with a crew and a cast, you always have to bond together, and that's where you get the flip side of it. You go from one extreme to another, you think, oh my goodness, how are we going to overcome this? And then because everyone gets together and they knuckle down, they find some creative solutions, and it just creates an amazing experience.
Yeah, exactly.
But talking about your work on the music video, I need to know, what was it like working on Jingle Jangle? Because you know, you especially think, wow, that's a Netflix project, especially from working on music videos and, you know, your time as a student to then working on a monstrous production in terms of scale. What was that like to kind of work on that caliber?
Well, I mean, wonderful. I worked on the portion that was filmed in Norwich on location, and I worked in the location department. And so what's crazier about a film of that scale with that budget is that, so the stuff that was filmed on location in Norwich took about a week to film, and I think it's about 2 minutes of the whole feature. And we took a week over it, but it was really good fun. It was filmed in June, so obviously it's a Christmas movie, but we filmed it maybe the hottest week of the year, which was really bizarre, you know, being in the boiling hot sunshine and being surrounded by sort of Victorian snow. But it was great. I think, yeah, the thing about it was that, you know, there were about 200 crew members, and then about, I think there were 60 supporting artists, so, you know, actors in the background, and then the core cast of about 9. So there was a lot of people, and with that comes a lot of extra stuff. So there are things on those sorts of productions that you don't really get on smaller ones. For example, craft services, which is, you know, kind of a van with snacks and drinks and coffees and stuff. But also, you know, there's a level of like separation. So for example, Forrest Whitaker, the star of that film, and, you know, there's a lot of kind of you know, I met him, I set up his dressing room for him, but it's that thing of kind of having a lot of stuff set up for the actors because they are of sort of a higher pay grade, but also, you know, Forrest Whitaker is someone who is bothered a lot by fans wanting autographs, and I think it's easy for people to be starstruck by famous people. But yeah, that was a kind of an experience on that set that obviously I hadn't had on many others, of part of my job being setting up his space for him to have separate from all of that. And then also just the fact that we were, like I say, filming in summer and kind of transforming Elm Hill in Norwich into a kind of midwinter Victorian setting. So yeah, it was crazy. It was a really interesting insight into how films of that scale are made and how different it is, but then also actually how similar it is in terms of within your department. You know, you get really close and you're working really hard in the same way. There's no difference in like the effort that you put in. It's just there are a lot more people there, and there's more money being spent on what you're doing, basically.
Brilliant. And can I just get a quick time check on the task just to see how long people have?
You have 5 minutes almost exactly left. So 5 minutes to complete filming.
I wish I could make a short film and then in that amount of time.
Well, yes, it's only 6 shots, and you know, we're in one setting each, so keeping it simple, like I said earlier, and we should all be fine. We should make it through. And like I said before, if anyone is struggling with anything, feel free to let us know in the chat, and I'll be happy to give some suggestions or help you out in any way that I can.
I do wonder, do you have any kind of advice for students who, hold on, I'm going to stop there because somebody has popped in the question. Where do you get your inspiration from as an artist? Which is a lovely question. Thank you very much.
That is a really lovely question. I think loads of different places. It's very hard to pin down, and that's probably the same for everybody. So because I work across film and theatre, I think there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination between the two. Often with my theatre project, I'll find myself thinking about films that I've seen or books that I've read or paintings or, you know, kind of things in other art forms that aren't theatre. And then when I'm making films, it's kind of the mirror image of that. I'm thinking about, you know, theatre performances that I've been to, dance pieces that I've seen, paintings, books, those sorts of things. But then also I think something that I've really found and come to just sort of accept, I don't feel like good or bad about it, but there is just sort of inherently like themes that I'm just interested in, whether that be because of my upbringing, my past experiences, my insecurities, my whatever. I think there's everyone has 1 or 2 themes that they just really care about or can't stop thinking about. So, you know, even if I try to avoid them, they turn up in whatever I'm writing. Something that I really enjoy is writing kind of I guess magic realism or sci-fi, things that are slightly off the norm, or things that are bringing theatre and film together I find really interesting, because I enjoy working in both of those formats. So inspiration can also be found between kind of practical things like, well, if I want to make something that's live but that has video in it, what story would lend itself to that? Or if I want to make a film but I want it to be theatrical, what lends itself to that? And kind of using, again, being resourceful, using what I've got, you know, well, I live near this forest and I have access to that to film in, so what could I come up with that should be set in a forest? And yeah, so really, I mean, maybe it's a cop-out answer, but kind of from everything. But I definitely think watching a lot of stuff, going to art exhibitions, reading, all of that kind of stuff definitely plays into it, because it gives you a kind of language to draw from, either to be like, I really like that, I want to try my own version, or God, I hated that, I definitely don't want to do that. Yeah, that can be very helpful as well, definitely.
Brilliant, thank you. And there's probably not that much time left on the task, I think.
Yes, so we're coming up for the last minute. I reckon I've got time to answer Safa's question, who are some of your favorite directors, very quickly, because my answer for that would be there are too many to name. Obviously, there's so many. I love, in terms of recent ones, I love Celine Sciamma. I love Wes Anderson. I'm a massive Wes Anderson fan. There's a guy called oh my goodness, Xavier Dolan, who's brilliant. But then also older people, Ingmar Bergman is great, Lynn Ramsey is great. Yeah, there's loads, there's too many to name. I haven't watched Inside yet. I need to watch that. I haven't watched it yet. And I think that's us up time-wise. We're coming to the final 5 seconds for filming. So the tone is going to go off in a moment. So if you are still filming, just bring them to an end now. I can see Tendi has asked, do our shots need to have music or have any editing involved, or do we just submit it as it is? Really good question. So you don't need to add any music or any editing, mainly because the thing that we're really focusing on today is those visuals, how you've put those shots together, what shot types you've chosen. So if you have been filming in OBS, then you should have one file to submit. Or if you've been using a phone or a webcam without that software, then you'll have those 6 clips. And if you just label them 1 to 6, that should be absolutely fine. I'm going to move on because I'm aware of time. But if you are just coming to the end of your filming, that's absolutely fine as well. So now that you've made your film, first of all, well done, because it is actually quite a lot to do in 15 minutes. I'd like you to write in the chat, or just think to yourself, if you don't want to share, what's the favorite thing about what you've just made? Feel free to go through it, watch it back if you want to, but I'm really interested to hear, because obviously I can't watch them right now. So Holly has said that her favorite thing about her film is the opening shot. That's great. It's important to have a strong opening shot. That's lovely. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to share about what they like about their film? If you would like to edit your films in your own time and you want to give that a go, then that's absolutely fine, of course, feel free. Lovely. And Precious has said, my favorite thing is the transitions between scenes. Fab. That's really good. Nice that you're thinking about that as well. That's really great. Lovely. Okay, and keep thinking about them. But then the other question for you is, what would you do next time to improve it? So if you were to kind of remake these films, maybe with a bit more time, what would you do to improve it? Is there one thing that you would either change or improve upon? And again, feel free to put it in the chat. or think it to yourself. But it's important to think about so that you can make something even better next time. That's nice, Tendi, that your favorite thing was the process. That's lovely. So Holly says, I think more about lighting and how I can use this to dramatic effect. Really good. Yeah, really important. So that's actually, yeah, a massive part of the frame. So where someone is really important, but then how they're lit tells you so much more again. Tendi says, develop my set more and add a few extra props to hint at the message of the piece. Definitely. Set, props, costume can really create a visual world. Every film will have those things considered. Nothing's an accident, except maybe the coffee cup in Game of Thrones. But apart from that, everything is intentional and is meant to be telling us something about the story. So that's a really good one. Precious says, adding sound to make my scenes dramatic. Yeah. So once you've got the visuals down and you're really happy with them, then sound will enhance it even more. It's important to have really strong visuals before you add the sound to make sure you're not relying on the sound, but definitely sound adds so much. Okay, that's great. So I'm gonna share a sort of sacrificial film with you. This is one that I made a few weeks ago in the same amount of time that you guys had. So be kind. But I thought it would be nice to watch a film, one of these films together, and just have a bit of a discussion about it. So we're going to think about those two questions again. What did you like? What would you change about it if you were to make it? And yeah, I'm going to show you this film. It might be a bit laggy. It doesn't have any sound, so don't worry about that. But just think about what you like, what you're getting from it, but also what you would improve if you made this film, what you would suggest that I do differently. Okay. Okay, so that's the film. I would like you to put in the chat what you liked about it, or what stood out to you about it. But then also, actually, the main thing is, what would you do differently if it was yours? Maybe something about the shot types, or about the story, or, I mean, I made it, so watching it back, I can see thousands of things that I would change. Lauren says, I like the close-up on the face, but I changed the lighting on one of the shots on the book just because it was a little distracting. Yeah, great, really good point. There was that box of light behind, wasn't there? Definitely. Personally, I would make the scenes a little more dramatic. Yeah, so make the subject matter more extreme. Definitely, really good. Anything else from anyone? A good thing to think about, Ira, is how you'd make it more dramatic, whether it's about the story of what's happening, or if it's about how it's being shown and making the visuals more dramatic. A slow zoom would help with suspense. Yeah, that's a great idea. Really good idea. Definitely, if you're zooming in on the book and then zooming in on my surprised face. Yeah, the lighting for the book more dark. Yeah, for sure. That would give it more of a sort of tone. That's really good. Great, guys. Lovely. All really good answers. Okay, so that's kind of the end of the practical portion of the session. Thank you all so much for joining in. Oh, last one from Tendi. I really like the tension created by you showing your reaction to the book and creating suspense. I would use some coloured lighting to add to the mood. That's a great idea. Yeah, because it was quite a flat colour-wise, so some coloured light would be a great idea. Lovely. Okay. thank you all very much. Like I say, that's kind of the end of the practical portion of today's workshop. But I'll hand back over to Gavin if you have anything to say, or if we have time for any more questions. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yes, I'm just going to run through a few things just before we dive into the kind of Q&A before we wrap things up. So I first of all just want to remind everybody that we have run a wide range of workshops across the summer school series since there's only one left. So tomorrow is our final live session with UX consultant Amy Shaw, and you can still book on to that session, but you can also access our previous summer school workshops, and they cover all sorts of different subjects, including acting, animation. There's even been a UX on games design and so much more. And all of our workshops are designed to give you an insight into lots of different areas that your creativity could take you, and suggest the many different jobs that do in fact exist. And like I said, you can still book on to Amy Shaw's UX workshop tomorrow, or you can request the recordings of the previous workshops by visiting our summer school page via the link that Tom is going to drop into the chat. We are also offering you the opportunity to receive an official ANUA certificate, which is great for those who are building up a personal statement for UCAS to get into universities. And to get one of these certificates, you will need to attend 6 of the 12 workshops, or watch 6 of the 12 workshops. And we want to see outcomes for at least 3 of those 6 that you attend. But please be aware that if you're submitting any work in response to those workshops, that they might be used for future promotional information for this series, and they might be used to promote future events. But you can send your 3 outcomes by email to student.recruitment@nua.ac.uk. And again, Tom will drop in the email into the chat for you there. And just a note that if you are sending over video submissions, which I assume everybody will be doing from today, if it's too big of a file size for email, you can send us a link, be it for YouTube or a Dropbox or WeTransfer, something like that will help as well. And these outcomes can be something that you've made as part of the workshop, or something you've made afterwards in response to the workshop. So like today, you can submit the storyboards, or you can submit your 6 shots that you filmed using OBS. So we'd love to see your work, and particularly myself, because I'm a film production graduate as well. So we're so keen to see what you've come up with today. And of course, we don't want us to just see them. We'd like the wider ANUA community to see your work as well. So with anything that you're making, or if you've taken any photos of any of your work or yourself attending the workshop, you can send those to our Instagram page, which is @ANUA Outreach. Again, Tom will be dropping that Instagram tag into the chat just now. And we'll be sharing some of our favorite pieces that you send in. So get involved. Again, we'd love to see your work. And I believe that is everything so far. So thank you, Georgia, so much for running the workshop today. And thank you all for tuning in and getting really interactive with the chat there. So if I've not missed anything out, I think we'll dive into the Q&A. I'm just going to see if there's any questions so far. Let's take a look. So some questions about, there we go, just in the nick of time. So what is the film industry like?
Well, that is a very good but very broad question. I think probably anyone you ask in the industry would give a different answer. But I think that there's probably a couple of things that are quite universal about it. One would be that everyone who works in the film industry works incredibly hard. It's a really hard working industry, and everyone is really kind of committed. Even if they're not that keen on the project that they're working on, they're really committed to whatever it is that they are working on. You know, if they're signed up to it, they're fully signed up to it. But I think also it's like I said at the beginning, collaboration and communication are really important. And once you've made some really good connections, they can really kind of either continue being great and getting you work and getting you on productions ongoing, or if you're nice to someone, make a good connection in uni, that might come back around and be useful 5 years in the future. You know, it's really it's somewhere that relies on people in a lot of different ways, but also it's just really, yeah, creative and hardworking, I guess is how I would describe it.
Lovely, thank you. We've got a flood of questions coming in now. So how can I get into post-production in the film industry?
Yeah, so post-production, there's a couple of different things that you can do. I think it depends what type of post-production you're really interested in, but one thing that's really good is getting work experience at post-production companies, and that usually involves basically just making teas and coffees, but can also include like logging footage and kind of watching over people's shoulder what they're doing, and that's a really great way of seeing how it works professionally, but also kind of getting in the room. But also it's really good to have like a strong portfolio of things that you have edited, which can come from a degree. You know, when you make stuff at uni, there's lots of films that need to be edited, and so that can give you a really good reel as well.
Thank you. I'm just going to quickly drop a couple of links as well in response to that question. First of all, there's a site called Screen Skills, which I just popped in the link now. And they're really good for just explaining a lot of the different roles across TV, film, and even dive into animation, a little bit of games as well. And they have different information about different training and apprenticeships you can do. It's a really great website, a really great resource. But also I'm dropping in a place specifically for post-production, which is Access VFX. And a little bit like Screen Skills, explains a lot about the different roles, but it's very much focused on post-production and getting into visual effects, and because VFX, animation and games is very closely linked. So that's a really good site for that, and they have some really good mentorship schemes as well with Access VFX, so just do check that out. Some other questions, just digging through. Is it difficult to start making enough money to live comfortably in the film industry when you start out?
That's a really good question, and I think money is something that a lot of people don't like talking about because they feel awkward about it or whatever, but I think it is important to talk about. I think it really depends what you're doing and what scale you're working at. If you are working for a production company, then it's very easy to make enough money. The sort of lowest rung on set, on a professional set, is still decently paid. I've worked as a runner for £100 a day, which usually we're working pretty long hours, but that works out at about £9 an hour or £10 an hour. And that's kind of the lowest rung. But then also sometimes to get your foot in the door, unfortunately, you do kind of have to work for free or for less money than you feel you're worth just to get in the room. And then you build from there quite quickly. So it's all about juggling. And what's really, I think, really good is one, being proactive and, you know, all the usual stuff about kind of saying yes as much as you can. But the other thing is really having a range of skills and I guess different strings to your bow is maybe the expression that I'd use. So for me, you know, I write and direct my own work, but that's not where most of my money comes from. My money comes from working on film sets for other people like Jingle Jangle. I worked on a project at October Studios in Norwich, so that was on a TV show in the costume department, or then also, you know, doing workshops, those sorts of things. Working in different settings means that you've kind of got different places where money's coming from, and then that makes it a lot easier if something falls through, you've got something else. Of course, you can also work full-time at a production company, and that's just the same as any other career path. You've got a salary, and that's more secure. But yeah, it is actually, I think, it's not easy because you have to work hard, but you can definitely earn enough money to live on the bottom rung.
Thank you. And just a few more questions before we sort of wrap up, because I know we're a little bit over time. But this next question, I think I know where your answer is going to be. Do you prefer post-production or production?
Oh yeah, well, so I work in production, so I prefer production. But to be fair, I really enjoy watching an edit come together, and there's the classic saying of, you make a film 3 times when you make it: once in pre-production before you even step on set, once in the room when you're filming it, and a 3rd time in the edit. And a bad edit can really break a film, and a good edit can really improve an average film. So I value it, but I enjoy being on set more.
And just a quick note, because we have run slightly over time and we want to be able to take the time to answer all the questions that you've got. If anybody does need to run off, you can obviously get a recording of this session, so you will still be able to, in your own time, watch back and be able to sit back and watch through Georgia's answers to all the questions that are still coming through. So there's no pressure to keep on if there is somewhere else that you need to be. But to go through more of the questions, I know you mentioned a little bit about connections and networking, but how can you give some examples of how you can make those connections?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's a couple of different types of networking, and often people only think of the type where you go to networking events and give people your business card, and it's quite cold. But there's a lot of other types. So for example, the people that you go to university with is a network of people that you then know in the industry, who might be on the same level as you, or who might get a break quicker than you do, and can then offer you a position that they know is going where they work, for example. So yeah, the people on your level are also really valuable network, or people to network with. You can also kind of network with the people that you're working with in a particular environment. So even if you have work experience somewhere, an internship, or a job, keeping in touch with people is really important. And that's all networking really is keeping in touch with people, letting them know what you're doing. And so that can really be in any context.
Thank you. And yeah, we just had a comment come in saying you can also network on LinkedIn, which I could personally vouch that social media sites like Twitter and LinkedIn has made some really useful connections. But springboarding off of social media, is being a content creator on social media important to promote yourself, or is it better to stay a little bit off the grid?
I think it depends. I truly believe you don't need to be really good at Instagram to get a job in the film industry. I know some people who have got lots of jobs through being active on social media, but you don't have to if you're not kind of naturally kind of good at social media, or you don't enjoy being active on there. That's one route. I have a close friend and colleague who I met at university who's really active on social media, and he has got a lot of success through that. But then I know people who have as much success as him that didn't. So it all depends on what route you're suited to, whether you enjoy using those things or not, as to whether it's worth pursuing, I think.
I like how all your answers kind of feed into the next question that we're going into, about, there's a little bit specific around set design and what the usual route to film set design is, and whether you have to take a specific course. But I imagine your answer is going to be a little bit similar to kind of all the different roles within film that there are available.
Yeah, definitely. So The thing with set, costume, production design is that, yeah, like with everything else, there are loads of different routes into it. You can study a film degree and specialize in production design. And if you go down that route, I'd really recommend being thorough in looking at the course content, what lecturers they have, how much set design they have, within the course, because that's obviously what you're there for. If you know that going in, that's a really useful thing to research before you sign up, or before you apply. But you could also, for example, study a theatre design course or a performance design course that will give you a lot of the same skill set, but in a different medium, and you can transfer it once you are looking for placements or when you get out into the industry. You could also do a more general course that doesn't focus on set design specifically or costume design, and then find your way into it professionally through contact, experiences, whatever. But yeah, you can do a course that's specific in that, or you can do a broader course and find your own specialism within it. Definitely.
Right, thank you. And just got to need to wrap up in a couple of minutes, so if we're going to have some sort of quick fire answers
Sure.
to the next couple of questions. What kind of internships should you look for to gain experience?
Well, I think, to be honest, if something presents itself to you and you're vaguely interested in it, go for it, because you never know what is an internship is going to lead to. Obviously sometimes when internships aren't paid or aren't paid well, it's not possible to go for them because you need to be earning money somewhere else or whatever. So that's absolutely fine, and you don't need to worry about that. But if you can take something on, go for it, whether it's the very specific thing that you're interested in or not. I know people who are really into camera but took an art department position and have ended up in camera because they found their way through. So yeah, go for it, whatever it is what I'd say.
And you've pretty much answered the next and final question that we're going to answer. Are you able to move from post to production if you don't like the route that you picked?
Yeah, 100%, definitely. There's always, there are loads of people like me who work in different areas of different creative industries, but there's also people who work in loads of different parts of the same industry. People who, for example, work at a post house as an editor during the day and then direct their own stuff in their time off or part-time. There's also people who, start as a promo producer, for example, making short adverts as a director, and then realize that actually the bit that they enjoy is editing and find their way into that as well. So yeah, definitely, you can always transfer across.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And I know that there are still questions coming through, but we're going to have to wrap it up there for today. But for those who still have questions, if you send your questions to the studentrecruitment@nua.ac.uk email address, then we can forward those on to Georgia, and then she'll be able to answer your question from there. So once again, Georgia, thank you so much for running the workshop today. It's been great.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone so much for joining in and getting involved and asking so many questions as well.
Brilliant. And there's some thank yous in the chat as well. And likewise, thank you everyone for taking part and really engaging with the workshop today. So Georgia, it's been a pleasure, and thank you all for turning out.
Thanks guys, see you later.